Robert T. Hanrahan served in World War II as a first lieutenant in the Army Air Corps. He was born in Springfield, Illinois, and enlisted in the Army, serving in the United States and then Europe as a navigator from May 1942 until November 1945. Hanrahan explains his motivation for enlisting and for choosing the Army Air Corps as his branch of service.
I hated Hitler and the Nazis in general. Ever since I was a kid, I was always interested in airplanes, and Charles Lindbergh was one of my favorite heroes.
Military life was unlike anything Hanrahan had experienced before, and he had to adjust accordingly.
Well, it's quite a difference, I'll tell you that. The discipline for one thing, and depended on where you were as to the food. Some places were better than others, but most of the time it was pretty good. Well, there wasn't much of a social life, I'll tell you that. It was pretty much drill, drill, drill. And that was the first part of my Air Corps experience, was on the ground. But that was all part of the discipline.
After completing his training, Hanrahan was assigned to the 390th Bomb Group and served his first mission on D-Day, June 6, 1944.
When we got to our target area, it was blanketed with clouds, and since we didn't have any radar, we had to turn around and come back and land with the full load of bombs, which is always a thrill too.
Hanrahan recalls another memorable mission.
One of the most interesting missions we had was on, I think it was June of '44, latter part of June. We were on the first, our group was on the first shuttle mission to Russia. We went from England to Russia to Italy and back to England again. And the part of Russia that we went to was now the Ukraine. It was part of the Soviet Union at the time. And this base we went to was between Kiev and Kharkov, a little place called Mirgorod. And the other wing, the three groups make up a wing. The other wing went to a place called Poltava. And as we were going to Mirgorod, we saw a German plane going west, but it was way beyond our range. We couldn't do anything about it. He was going pretty fast too. And apparently he had spotted this group at Poltava. And because the German bombers came over that night and destroyed something like 50-some B-17s that were on the ground at Poltava, but they passed right over us. But the next day we moved, to say the least. We didn't want them coming back. So, and then, let's see, we got credit for that mission. We bombed in Germany on the way to Russia, and on the way to Italy, we bombed again.
Another terrifying experience occurred while Hanrahan was flying from Kearney, Nebraska to Albany, New York.
We had a nightmare of a trip from Kearney, Nebraska. We were told not to land any place until we got to Albany, New York, and call the control tower there, and they would tell us where to go. This is on the way overseas. We went through a horrible thunderstorm. All that started about 10 o'clock that night, I guess. We took off about dark. The thunderstorm, everybody hit it. The weatherman told us to expect it, but we'd be able to go around it or under it or over it or something. But we were not able to do that. We couldn't go up to 10,000 feet because you had to have oxygen. We didn't have oxygen on that plane, so we couldn't go that high. But we went down low, went try to go around at this end, try to go around that. We had to, Norby, the pilot, says, I guess we'll go right through it. So he said, give me a heading. I said, well, hang on to the one you got the best you can. And that old plane was just like an elevator, up and down. You had to hold on for dear life or you'd be thrown across the plane. But that was a scary night, I'll tell you. And then about midway through, the plane was struck by lightning, and we could see the almost fire shooting off of the front end of the thing. And the bombardier, Burley, he picked up his parachute, and I grabbed mine. We were ready to go. We went right through that storm, and we came out of it it was early morning, I guess. I could look, there was a break in the clouds, and I could look down and see 3 sets of lights and a line going through them. And what it was, I looked on the map, and we were right on course and right on time. And it was Davenport, Rock Island, and Moline, and the Mississippi River running through them up there. And then by the time we got to Chicago in an hour or so, it was perfectly clear. And we had a beautiful flight all along the Great Lakes up to Albany, New York, and they sent us to Bangor, Maine to land.
This frightening experience was not the last for Hanrahan. While his group was bombing an oil refinery in Germany, his plane went down. This left him and his crew in the hands of the Germans.
All of my immediate unit, the crew that we flew with, our pilot was killed, but the rest of us became POWs. We were on our 21st mission, bombing a synthetic oil refinery at a little place called Merseburg, Germany. And we got rid of our bombs, but while we were over the target, we got hit with flak. Now, flak is anti-aircraft fire, and it's deadly. You'd be flying towards your target, and you'd see these black puffs up ahead of you, right at your altitude, and you got to fly right through it. Well, that's combat. But this time they got us, and we had 2 or 3 smoking engines, and the pilot called me, said, "How far are we from Switzerland?" I said, "We're too far to go on a couple of engines." So it wasn't long after that he said, "Bail out." That was up at the pilot was the commander of the plane, and it was up to him to give the order, so we bailed out. And I was taken prisoner as soon as I hit the ground practically, because they were waiting for me as I came down in parachute. And by the way, that was our first and only parachute jump. We didn't have any practice on it. We were told how to go about it, but we didn't have any practice, and that was quite a thrill too, I might add. But our pilot was supposed to get out. In fact, his co-pilot was his first cousin, and the co-pilot was getting down out of his seat and getting ready to bail out. And he said that the pilot was doing the same thing. He thought he was following him, but something happened. None of us know what happened.
As soon as he hit the ground, he was picked up by the Germans.
We were picked up. We were taken into this little village.
Who picked you up?
And there was like a courtyard. And that's where they put us in there. It had an iron fence on one side with a gate. And it was about the middle of the afternoon. I guess the mothers were bringing their little kids from school down to see the terror flaggers, as they called us. Some of them called us the Chicago gangsters. But anyway, the little kids would take a peek out of around their mother's skirt, and then go hide again. They thought we were big bad wolves, I guess. But anyway, we were turned over to the Luftwaffe. That's the German Air Force, and we were taken prisoner by them. And thank heaven we got them instead of the SS or some of those Nazi outfits that maltreated prisoners.
Hanrahan faced many harsh conditions as a POW, including wretched food, poor living conditions, and freezing temperatures.
We were all skin and bones, and if it hadn't been for the International and the American Red Cross, we would have all starved to death, I'm sure, because the German rations were negligible. And when the partials, as they call them, got through, we did all right, the Red Cross packages. War bread, they called it Kriegsbrot. Kriegs means war, brot is bread, war bread. And it was, apparently they must have stored it in sawdust because they had a lot of sawdust. And I guess it was used for filling too. And that war bread was horrible stuff. And they gave us that. We got potatoes. The compound that I stayed in prison camp, had a mess hall. And they took things out of the Red Cross package to fix in the mess hall. And they'd usually cook the potatoes and Spam and whatever else. But our steak dinner was cream potatoes, or cream span over fried potatoes. That was our steak dinner. But in the breakfast in the morning was usually furnished by the Germans, the barley for cereal. You got used to it, it wasn't bad, but once in a while you'd find a little meat in there too, a worm, and you'd have your meat ration for the day. But, and then your lunch and dinner were pretty much, well, you had your evening breakfast in the mess hall and the evening meal in the mess hall until it burned down. And we were pretty much cooking on our own, and those heating stoves in the room. A room about this size, maybe just a slight bit bigger. There were 14 men, bunks stacked up 2 and 3 high, and it was pretty crowded, as you can imagine. That's day and night, you know, and your only respite was to go out and walk around the compound, and that wasn't a very good idea. And when it's about 20 below zero and you're freezing anyway, 2 or 3 days we had our water supply was shut off, but fortunately there was snow on the ground, and we'd go out and scoop up some of this snow, bring it in and melt it, boil it, and drink that. It was the coldest winter that Europe had in 100 years. And you'd go to bed in your sack, and I mean sack. It was like a gunny sack filled with straw, and you put on everything you had because it was that cold. You only had one blanket, that's all they gave you. And you double that over and wear your overcoat, put your overcoat over that, and by some way keep warm, because the stove that was in the room took briquettes, charcoal briquettes, and they didn't give us enough briquettes to keep the thing going all day and night.
News of the Battle of the Bulge also affected the Americans at the prison camp.
Well, we begin to wonder, is this war going to go on forever? You know, we're going to be back behind barbed wire forever. Is this going to be the rest of our life? You know, you begin to wonder about things like that. And we had a way of getting the news, and I won't go into the details, but they printed a little newspaper every day and passed it around from barracks to barracks. And we had to make sure there weren't any guards around to listen or pick it up. But if there were, we'd put the newspaper in the stove. But we got news, and we got the news about the Battle of the Bulge, and Morale just went down to the bottom. Didn't know what to think. But then when the air cleared up over there and they were able to fly again, and things began to go the other way, then our way, and from then on it was just boom, all the way through.
Being a prisoner of war was a frightening and nerve-wracking experience for Hanrahan.
The Nazis could be, you never knew what to expect from them. In fact, there was a story going around at the end there that Hitler had ordered all POWs to be shot. But Eisenhower got on the stick there and then told these prison camp commanders, I'm holding you responsible for the lives of those men. And you'll pay the price if anything happens to them. There were words to that effect. And believe me, they didn't carry it out. Thank heaven.
It was also hard for his family to deal with this experience. Hanrahan reads 2 telegrams his mother received while he was a POW in Germany.
Early August of 1944, my mother got this telegram one afternoon, Western Union telegram. I'll read it. The Secretary of War desires me to express deep regret that your son, Second Lieutenant Robert T. Hanrahan, has been reported missing in action since 29 July over Germany. If further details or other information are received, you will be promptly notified. Well, it wasn't until about 3 weeks later that they found out that I was a prisoner of war. This is the telegram here that an intercepted unofficial shortwave broadcast from Germany mentioned the name of Second Lieutenant Robert T. Hanrahan as a prisoner of war. No personal message was included. This information supplements previous official report received from the International Red Cross. Signed, Provost Marshal General. So they knew I was a prisoner then. It took about 3 weeks. They didn't know whether I was alive or dead.
After 9 months of wondering if he would ever make it out, Russians liberated the POWs at the Barth, Germany prison camp. Hanrahan was finally allowed to return home, where he quickly married his fiancée. We would like to express our gratitude and thanks to Mr. Robert T. Hanrahan for taking time to participate in this interview. Even more importantly, though, we appreciate Mr. Hanrahan for his outstanding service in World War II. Through this project, we have gotten a glimpse into the numerous sacrifices required by every man and woman who participated in the war effort. Food was never in excess or very appetizing. Injuries were frequent and death was common. Leaving loved ones behind for long periods of time, not knowing if you would ever see them again, was saddening, and the thought of dying was on each man's mind. We found that war is not as glamorous as it may seem. Each veteran was undoubtedly faced with hardships and sufferings. Mr. Hanrahan displayed courage throughout his 9 months as a prisoner of war, earning the POW medal along with many others for his service as a navigator. We are so thankful to Mr. Hanrahan for fighting to better the lives of every American.